Hey Dylan, I'm going to attempt to explain GitHub here within, 20 minutes. Okay, so at a high level, let's see here. GitHub is a way for you to store snapshots of your code online, okay? I want to use an example first. This here, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with it. This is Google Docs, okay? What do you do the first time you use Google Docs, right? You either do two things. You either create a folder or you create a file, right? And I want you to keep in mind, as I'm explaining this, that GitHub is very, very, very similar to Google Docs. So I want to first explain Google Docs and break it down to its fundamental level. And hopefully, with that knowledge in mind, you can understand GitHub with this example first, okay? The only difference with GitHub is that, yes, it's just a bit more verbose, I think that's a great word. There's just a couple of more steps and there's a bit more that you can do with GitHub. Okay, so you create a new document. That obviously is pretty straightforward. You create a new file, right? And then there's also this place called version history. Now, if you don't understand anything about this video, but all you understand is version history, you are probably 70% to 80% there when it comes to GitHub, okay? But a little caveat, computers work in binary, which means it's either a 1 or a 0, right? And sometimes 70% of understanding something, that's a 0 in the computer world, okay? And the difficulty and the mastery of computer science and these things, and why AI can't replace a programmer, is that it can get you 85 to 90% there. But that last 10% is what makes the huge difference, okay? But if there is anything that you understand from this, and it's version history, that GitHub is literally just version history for programmers, you're 80% there. So let's take a look at the version history. Here on the right-hand side, did I do anything here to create this version history? No. Google Docs literally does this for you automatically, for free. There is no command I have to say, please save this. You know, when you play like Final Fantasy or a PlayStation game, you literally have to go into the menu and say, manual save this checkpoint, right? But then as time went on, there was like auto saves and whatnot. You can think of it like that. Okay, like Google Docs has auto save on the game of creating documents. And let's take a look. Back in October 14th, I had a completely different resume, right? And I can restore this version, okay? Why am I explaining these things? Because this right here is literally what GitHub does. But instead of your document, it's for a repository or a folder in your computer, okay? So let's take a look, and that's it. That's all I got in regards to Google Docs, okay? Now, let's go ahead, and I want to open up this folder, okay? This folder literally represents, you can think of it as a Google Docs folder, okay? But the problem is, in your file system, there's no way that I have an auto save, right? Let's say I'm working on some code, okay? And here's my index.html, okay? I'm opening this up in my fancy, Visual Studio, but you can also open this in like TextEdit or something. It's not much of a big difference. The real reason why people use Visual Studio Code is because there's a terminal built in that's literally already in your folder, right? If I go open dot, this terminal is already on this folder so I can run different commands. I can create directories, create files. I can run Git commands. If you want another video in regards to like, what can I do to create, like, what can I even do on the terminal? More than happy to do that for you. But let's stick to the basics. We want to just focus on GitHub right now. And I'm just going to do one thing, okay? I'm not going to do any fancy coding stuff. I'm just going to open up index.html, all this crazy code, okay? And I'm just going to find this hello world, and I'm just going to say like, okay, I want to change this to like hello universe, okay? I press save, Command S. I refresh the page. Boom. It changes, right? Okay, back to the Google Docs analogy. Google Docs might have saved it automatically for me. You know, there's a version that it just created. But as a developer, we don't have that. So what do we have? How can we save these things? Well, we have GitHub, okay? Now, I hope that snippet gave you an idea of like, okay, what the heck do I even use GitHub for? Version history, that's it. Somebody changed something on your code and you wanted to be able to snapshot that and say, yes, that's the one that I want, okay? Okay, now, before we dive in, I want to showcase just some philosophy on behind how they designed the version history. Like, how do you design a save button for coders without having an auto save, right? And this is how GitHub created it. They have 3 different stages, okay? So right now, this code here that I can change, and maybe this is a better way of seeing it, this index.html that I can open up, right? Literally lives on my computer. It's like, how am I gonna send this over to you? I'll text it to you. You know, I'll like copy this and I'll send you the folder, right? Or I'll email it to you, right? Okay, that might be okay for one file, but can you imagine how am I gonna transfer all of this stuff, with all the crazy code, right? With like the images, the AI bot, like how can I transfer that over to you, Dylan? Like, do I send it as an email? So that question is the problem that GitHub solves, okay? And this is how they do it. They have this process. Like I mentioned, the first stage of the file is where? On my local computer. And what I want to do, my end goal is to say, Dylan, I want you to see the file and I want you to be able to edit it as well. And here are the steps through GitHub to get to that point, okay? Now, let's go to the very basic of how we sort of, quote unquote, install GitHub, right? This system onto this folder. This is the first part. And let me move it here. So you type in git init. Okay. Anytime you see a command like this, the first command is most of the time, almost always the program you want to run. Git, it's like, I want to run the Git program. The second, what we call parameter or word, is going to be the command you want it to run. So it's saying in the Git program, I want to run the initialize command. You type it in and boom, initialized empty Git repository, okay, in this part here. Okay, now look, even though it says I created a document here, .git, it doesn't show up in your Finder on your Mac. But if let's say I created another folder, mkdir is basically saying create a folder of ABC. It's gonna show up. But check this out. If I do .abc, it's not gonna show up. So this is one of those rules in the terminal that once you know it, it's not a mystery, that every single folder that you create that has a dot in front of it is always going to be hidden in these Finder items, okay? But in the terminal, and why this is powerful, is you can say ls just basically means like list files. And there's a huge history on like why these terminal commands are written this way. Okay, it goes back to like the 80s, and there's like history and culture behind it. I can definitely create another video of that, of like the top 10 most common terminal commands, if that's something of interest. But for right now, just trust me of knowing like, you know, of this. -A is basically saying, show me all the files, including the ones that are hidden as well. When I press enter, boom, there's not only .git, .abc, there's also this .ds store that's there, okay? So when we do git init, all it's saying is, or what it's doing in the background is literally just creating this .git folder, okay? This is what sort of initializes and says, okay, now this folder belongs on GitHub, okay? I'm just gonna remove these DS store. Don't really worry about that. And if I do ls-a again, .abc and .ds store is removed, okay? Okay, I'm gonna clear my terminal to like restart it. And now we go back to this, okay? We've already now, with git init, we've initialized Git, right? Going back to the Google Docs example, Google Docs does it for you automatically, right? But with GitHub, we need to be a little bit more verbose. The first thing that we needed to do was we need to initialize Git on our local folder, right? Okay, so moving forward, now we're gonna run the Git program and we're gonna run the command status. Basically, okay, Git is now initialized. What is the status? Okay, basically a couple of words, right? That basically means that, hey, these files, Git is reading them, but they're not in the stage at the current moment. Okay, now, going back to Google Docs, there is no such thing as staging, okay? They don't have this phase. It's literally just local, what's working on my Google Docs, and then it just permanently saves it and gives you a version history. They do that autosave automatically online, okay? With GitHub, there's another middle step here. And I feel like once you get this, GitHub will sort of click for you. You get to about 85 to 90% there, okay? What you need to do to add your local, the items that are here, onto the staging environment, okay, the staging phase, and once it's here, it's not on GitHub yet. It's on stage 3 that it will be on GitHub, and I'll show you. But before we get to stage 3, and this is true for all developers that use all GitHub, okay, there's always gonna be this phase of staging, okay? And the way I like to think of it, if I'm a beginner, is like, I just need to make these things that are red, green. If they are green, they are in the staging area, okay? So I'm going to run the Git program, and I'm going to add whatever it is that I want, which is the next parameter, onto the staging environment. Boom. Okay. In computers, in Unix, in the terminal, when you do not get a response like this, that means that something good has happened, okay? So we'll go ahead and click Git status again, and you're gonna see that it's green, which means that it is where? On the staging phase, right? So local, you have to do git init, the items were red, you say run the Git program and add everything, and now it's in the staging environment, okay? And again, all we're trying to do is just version history. That's all we're trying to do. The next thing that you want to do in every single snapshot on GitHub, you have to write a description, okay? And the programmatic way of doing that is git commit -m is the message, or you can even just type git commit, right? Git snapshot. They should probably change it to snapshot. I think it just makes more sense, but they call it commit, okay? So git commit, and you just have to write, here's the files that will be added, and I'll write a description that says, first snapshot for tutorial, okay? I'm going to save this. Now look, if I click Git Status, it's not going to have anything. Boom. Nothing to commit, working tree clean. That basically says, hey, these things that you saved here, the snapshot is there. Okay? So that's the first thing. We were here, git add, staging, we committed it. Now the last thing we need to do is it is ready to be stored on GitHub. Okay? You can think of this staging phase as just like a snapshot. I want to create this snapshot. That's what it is. Okay. Now we go to GitHub. I need to change my photo there, but whatever. I'll just create a new repository, which you can think of this as like a new folder, right? For me to store these items. Okay, there's a bunch of these like, Git program to run. You'll see a few of these, like you have to initialize it. This is adding a README, right? Here's the commit that we did. Don't worry about branch right now, but it's pretty straightforward. But don't worry about that right now. And here is what we need, which is git remote add. The Git program remotely on the web needs to add this URL, okay? GitHub makes it super easy for you, so I'm just gonna copy and paste. But this basically says, hey, for the folder and the snapshot that I want this to store, put this here on the internet. Again, it didn't say anything, so that's perfectly fine, right? And git push is basically the last thing that we need to do to put from the stage all the way to online. Okay, when I run this program, something's gonna happen here on the right-hand side. Do you wanna guess? Okay, I will just reveal it. Now, all the folders here that we had from here is on GitHub. So I can go call you, Dylan, and instead of sending emails of like, hey, here's your index.html and all your different files and and get lost in email, I can literally just give you this website, and you can copy this over to your computer and you can start working on it. If we go back to the Google version history, all it's doing is now I can send you this URL and you can start working on it the same way that I can. That's all GitHub is. And it has these ways here and different terminal commands that just makes it so confusing. But at the end of the day, if you can stick with the version history on the right-hand side of Google Docs, you will be fine. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if you have any further questions or anything. I will be posting this on YouTube, and I am starting to think of just putting out a series just to put it out on the internet. So if there's anything that you'd like, feel free to text me. And yeah, thanks.